Hello, and welcome back to Thecrimereel. For this week's true crime story, we shall be going to Ireland in the 1950s to look at the unusual events which followed the kidnapping of baby Patrick Berrigan. Our narration begins on Saturday, December the 18th, 1954. A young mother by the name of THERESA Berrigan of Moore Street, Dublin, was busy with some last-minute Christmas shopping. Dublin's main shopping area, Henry Street, was packed with Christmas shoppers. THERESA wanted to visit the Woolworths store to pick up a teddy bear for her son's first Christmas. As was quite common practice at the time, she left baby Patrick outside the packed shop in his pram while she popped inside to make the purchase. Just moments later, when she returned with her shopping, Patrick had gone. In the chaos of a busy shopping street, someone had simply walked away with him. The sequence of events which followed his kidnapping would ultimately end up with 3 crimes being solved. With Patrick missing, the area around Henry Street was cordoned off and a search began. When this provided no clues as to Patrick's whereabouts, a huge countrywide search followed. The kidnapping was front-page news the following day. Many of the news reports drew comparisons to 2 previous unsolved kidnappings which had happened in the same area in 1950 and just a few months before Patrick's abduction. Panic set in. Parents were afraid to take their eyes off of their children for even a second. Usual practices of leaving babies outside shops or homes to sleep all but stopped. A reward of £100 was offered for any information leading to the return of baby Patrick. The following day, on Sunday, 19th of December 1954, a lady by the name of Louise Doherty was reading the morning newspaper when she came across a picture and report about Patrick's kidnapping. Louise recalled a strange interaction that she'd had the day before on the train from Dublin to Belfast. Louise had been travelling with her son Danny and niece Louise when they noticed a woman who was behaving very oddly. The woman was carrying a baby who seemed quite distressed. Louise began talking to the woman, who explained that her baby was crying because he was hungry, and unfortunately she had broken the bottle which she'd had with her, so had nothing to feed him. Louise helped the woman to get the baby some milk. 2 important things stuck in Louise's mind from this interaction. The baby only had 1 sock and shoe, something which tied in with the news report that only 1 sock and shoe had been found in Patrick's abandoned pram, and also that the woman had said she lived on the White City estate. Louise decided to write a letter to THERESA Berrigan telling THERESA what she had seen, just in case it was related to baby Patrick's disappearance. A few days later, the police arrived to interview Louise. With the information she provided, the police visited a house in White City, Belfast. The owner was a lady by the name of Margaret McGeehan. Now, just to clarify, I also found the name Barbara McGeehan, so I'm going to run with the story as being Margaret, but it's possible the names may be different. Under police questioning, Margaret broke down and confessed to taking Patrick. Margaret told the police that she had lost 2 babies of her own, one of whom had been stillborn just 6 weeks earlier. At a time when women would generally give birth without their partners present, she managed to conceal the stillbirth from her husband, telling him that she had to travel to Dublin for medical reasons. When she returned, she told her husband that she had given birth while in Dublin and that Patrick was his son. Margaret had taken good care of Patrick and he was unharmed. He was soon reunited with his parents, Matthew and THERESA. During their time with Margaret, it was discovered by police that she had an older son and also a 4-year-old daughter named Bernadette. After becoming suspicious of the unusual age gap between the 2 siblings, police decided to investigate further. Police were certain that Bernadette was not Margaret's biological daughter. Margaret told police that Bernadette had been given to her 4 years earlier by a woman by the name of Ellen, who had since died. However, after reviewing details of the previous kidnappings in the area, police believed that the 4-year-old girl was actually Elizabeth Brown. Elizabeth was the 5th child born to Bridget and John Brown, who had been kidnapped from Henry Street on the 25th of November 1950. 3-month-old Elizabeth had been sleeping in her pram while her mother, Bridget, had been selling newspapers and chatting to customers. When Bridget had been momentarily distracted, Elizabeth had been snatched. During the court case that followed, Margaret maintained that the 4-year-old girl had been given to her by her friend Ellen after she'd fallen pregnant by a man named Patrick McDonough. At the trial, Patrick confirmed his relationship with Ellen, but advised the court that they had 3 sons. Ellen had never given birth to a daughter. In the days before DNA testing, the young girl was positively identified by Bridget and John Brown due to a distinctive birthmark on her face. Margaret was found guilty and sentenced to 2 years in prison. It was ruled that Margaret's husband was innocent of any knowledge of the abductions. During the trial, 4-year-old Elizabeth was temporarily placed into a children's home before ultimately being returned to her biological parents. It was an extremely difficult time for the young girl. She had no understanding as to why she was being removed from the only family and home which she had ever known. Whilst the news stories continued about the kidnappings of Patrick and Elizabeth, another couple were watching and hoping that perhaps Margaret had somehow been involved with taking their daughter as well. However, any hope of that came to nothing when it was revealed that Margaret was not looking after any more young children. The couple, Christy and Margaret Ashmore, lived in Cashel Road, Crumlin. Their daughter, Pauline, had been taken from her pram on the 19th of October 1954, just 2 months before Patrick had been abducted. Similar to Patrick and Elizabeth, Pauline had been taken with her pram whilst her mother was shopping on Camden Street. Pictures of baby Pauline had been circulated all over Ireland and shown on cinema screens before films. However, there had been no leads in the investigation. With the details of the 2 children's disappearances making headline news, a call was made on Tuesday, January 25th, 1955. The man at the end of the line wanted to remain anonymous, but said that he had a story for the newspaper. He claimed to have the details of a woman who was having a miracle birth. He told the reporter that the woman in question was due to give birth any day now, despite having a baby just 3 months earlier. The date he gave for the first baby's birth was the 19th of October 1954, the same day that Pauline had disappeared. The caller gave reporters an address for the lady with the miracle pregnancy, and a reporter and photographer headed over to a property in Oliver Bond Street in Dublin. When they arrived, they were met by a lady by the name of Mrs. Hughes, who told them that her daughter, Therese Fitzpatrick, was in hospital having her baby. Mrs. Hughes gave them permission to photograph the other baby girl who she was looking after while her daughter was in hospital. The reporter compared the picture to the one that had been circulated of baby Pauline, and it appeared to be a match. The police were alerted and they visited Christy and Margaret Ashmore, who confirmed that this was indeed their daughter Pauline. The family was soon reunited and Therese was arrested. During the court case, Therese's husband testified that he had returned home from work one night in October and found his wife playing with a baby. He had jokingly asked her where she had bought it, but did not pursue this any further. Therese testified that she was not in sound mind and had not known what she was doing when she took baby Pauline. Therese was given a 12-month suspended sentence. Whilst the initial kidnapping of Patrick was a horrific ordeal for those involved, some comfort can possibly be gained by knowing that his abduction ultimately led to Elizabeth and Pauline being reunited with their families. In a surprising turn of events, when Margaret was released from prison after serving 18 months of her 2-year sentence, Bridget and John Brown allowed her to visit Elizabeth in an attempt to help Elizabeth overcome the sense of separation and confusion that she felt due to her complex start in life. Every year, with her parents' blessing, Elizabeth would travel to Belfast for a holiday with the woman who had kidnapped her. Whilst many may question the Browns' decision to let Margaret remain in their daughter's life, others believe that it is this act of utter selflessness which allowed Elizabeth to heal. Elizabeth went on to marry James Haggerty and they had 3 children of their own. Sadly, she died of cancer in 1988 at just 38 years old. That was the story of Ireland's stolen babies. As usual, be interested in any comments you make down below. I just wanted to mention Mojo Warrior, who lives in East Cork, and he reckons the hospitality is amazing in Ireland, and you must also eat the soda bread. And great for megalithic stuff and castles. Thanks for that, Mojo Warrior. Thanks very much for listening to The Crime Reel. Stay safe. Goodbye. Psst. Hello to Kevin Potts. You mentioned you like the way I say baby. Then we go and get this story as well. Thanks. Stay safe, everyone. Goodbye.